Capture? There we go. People, any prism, the surface area is the two identical cross-sectional faces. So a prism is a shape with two circles, one on either end, and anywhere I cut through that, stop talking, Flynn, I'd get a circular cross-section. So the cross-sectional face, there's two of those, so there's two circles. Every prism is therefore two of its cross-sectional faces plus a rectangle that wraps all the way around the perimeter of those shapes. So the rectangle that wraps around this Pringles can has to wrap all the way around the perimeter of that circle. The height of the prism is also called perpendicular height, and it is the distance between the two identical faces. So the distance between those two circles is the height of the prism, and there's a rectangle that wraps around, and so the length of that rectangle would be equal to what aspect of the circle? If it was a different shape, it would be equal to the perimeter of that shape, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So the formula for the surface area of a cylinder is 2 times the area of a circle, 2 pi r squared, plus the area of the rectangle, base times height, but that base or length is the circumference of the circle, which is 2 pi r. So that is that length of the rectangle. The rectangle's area needs to be times by the height, so there we go. We can simplify that formula by factorizing it. What's the common factor between these two terms? So I could have 2 pi r out the front multiplied by r plus h if I wanted. I'm actually not very fond of this formula because it lacks a characteristic that this one has. This part is 2 times the circle, and this part is the rectangle, because sometimes you will be asked to find the surface area of an open cylinder, like a glass, where there's no top. And this is your dead fairy risk, that if I say please find the surface area of this open cylinder with no top, or even just the surface area of like a toilet roll with no bottom either, that you'll forget to take out one or both of the circles. If it's an open cylinder, what do I do to this 2? Get rid of it, because there's only one circle. If it's a totally open cylinder with no ends, what do I do to this bit? There we go. Please don't make this error in the test. It will make me very sad and I'll have to draw a dead fairy. So if you are finding the surface area of a prism, you are using this formula. You're welcome to use this for a closed, has 2 ends cylinder. I don't think you need it. Do you want an example of the surface area of a cylinder?
No, that's right. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. The other shapes that you really should know are, of course, a rectangular prism, and it has a special formula because a rectangular prism has length, width, and height. This front face is length times height, yeah? How many of those are there? And this side face here is height times width. How many of those are there? And the top and the bottom are length times width, and there's 2 of those. Do you see something that we could factorize? The 2. The surface area of a rectangular prism is 2 times each dimension multiplied to each other one. length times height, plus width times height, plus length times width. It really doesn't matter which one's which, because I could just turn it over and then a different one's the height. So that is a specific formula for a rectangular, or of course a cube, prism. The cube is even easier, as you'll see from your sheet, 6 times the length squared. Because the length squared is one face, there's 6 faces, you multiply by 6. So these are the formulae as given to you. The trick I would like to point out, and let's take a nasty question, if I can find one. This works for any prism. Let's say these are in meters, I don't know. If I asked you to find the surface area of this prism, you'd have to find the area of 3 rectangles and 2 triangles. Do you have all the dimensions needed?
No, you need to have.
This rectangle here has this dimension there.
You need the hypotenuse.
I do indeed need the hypotenuse. How would I find it? I would use my friend Pythagoras. So find the hypotenuse. People. Shh. 4 plus 9 is 13. Okay. Another dead fairy error. I would strongly recommend. Can someone double check my maths, please? Because I'm. Thank you. Very, very tired. Square root of 13. Don't go rounding this here. Just make this the square root of 13 and use that in your calculations. Because why? It's correct. It's exact. If you round and then you round again, you can build in error. If you ever have to round an answer and then use that to do more calculations, keep at least 2 more decimal places than your answer will need. So this wants correct to 1 decimal place. If I was going to evaluate C, I'd keep 3 decimal places, but since you've got an exact answer, you might as well keep it. It's more exact. So try not to round until the end of your working on any question. If you have to round, keep 2 or 3 guard digits, that is more digits than your answer needs, or leave the exact form in here. Remind me to tell you an interesting story about rounding error. So now I've got those. I could just, if you have trouble with surface area, you can always imagine looking down from the top and sort of unfolding it. Put the bottom down, unfold the 2 faces, unfold the sides. I drew that kind of too small. Let's zoom. No, let's not zoom. So, how many rectangles?
3.
Look again. 1. What is the height of this rectangle?
7. Everything's 7.
This tiny, tiny, tiny little rectangle here.
2.
2. This one.
3.
This one.
13.
Could you add all those together and just find
Yes.
1 rectangle?
Yes.
And 2 plus 3 plus the square root of 13 would be what for this triangle?
5.
What?
Sorry.
It's 5 plus. Yeah, but what? The entire universe that's viewing YouTube can listen to the chaos that is my class. Hi, Ms. Daniels, are you enjoying this? Hi. Yes, it's 5 plus the square root of 13, but what is that for this triangle?
Surface area.
I added up 2 plus 3 plus the square root of 13. It's the perimeter of that triangle. Stop talking now. I have no more sense of humour. Shush. Shush. The perimeter of your cross-sectional shape forms the width of the rectangle that wraps around the prism. Any prism, you can find the total surface area by getting the perimeter of the cross-section and multiplying it by the height for that wraparound rectangle. Then, of course, you have 2 times the area of the cross-section, and the total of those two is the surface area. So I would find 2 times the area of the triangle, find the area of that wraparound rectangle, and add them together. Do you want the working for that?
Wait, so if you're trying to figure out the area of that shape.
Surface area of that
just
shape.
The area, would you write? So the volume, would you do like...
Let's not do volume.
Okay.
Volume is area times height, but let's not go there.